Hi, I'm Keith Watson. Well, as a kid, my dad was in the Navy. He was a Seabees, that's combat construction. And so he got deployed quite a bit. He was in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. We lived in California, I guess was when I first remember as a kid. I was born on Guam. We moved from there to California. And I had a little brother. I don't remember him being born. He was just always around. So, and we're really tight today. We talk all the time. I really enjoy him being around. And that we've lived through all these experiences together. My dad being deployed all the time, my mom was pretty much ran everything while my dad was out. Um, she was she's a remarkable woman. Not many people can put up with that kind of lifestyle, and she did, despite my help. I was strong-willed, shall we say, and so I would throw, if I didn't like what was going on, I'd throw a temper tantrum. And my mom got completely exasperated with me, and she was on the verge of just giving up, as she tells it to me. And she just was dug in and it's like, no, he's the kid, I'm the adult. He's not getting away with this. And so she would spank me. She'd try everything she could, and nothing worked. I'd just get madder. And so one day she just, in exasperation, stuck me in the bathtub and threw a glass of ice water on me. And I immediately stopped. I really didn't like that, apparently. I vaguely remember it. Uh, the one incident I definitely remember was we went to the grocery store, and me thinking, oh, we're not at home, I can't get the ice water. And so I started to throw a fit in the grocery store, and she had a buggy full of food. And she stopped and said, if you don't stop, I'm taking you home and you're getting the ice water. And I, oh, no, you're not going to, buggy, not going to give this up. She left that buggy right in the middle of the aisleway, put me in the car. I immediately started acting like a little angel. I'd be perfectly fine. No, she took me home, put me in the bathtub, and hit me with a whole pitcher of ice water. Um, and once we'd gone through that, I started being a little less recalcitrant, shall we say. Um, and it was really interesting. Parents do things completely unwittingly that really stick with a kid. My dad gave me this bike. It was this probably from a yard sale or something. It was this really old. It was all black. It had these big fat tires, and it was pretty beat up. But it was my bike, and they got me a little tiny license plate on the back that had my name on it under the seat. And he taught me how to ride it in the front yard. And I was riding around. I had so much fun. One day it went missing, and my mom went out looking for it and found it around the corner at a neighbor's house, which for me might as well have been another country because it was across the street. And she went up in their driveway, got the bike, and started leaving with it. And they came out and yelled, "Hey, what are you doing? That's our bike." And she goes, "Unless your kid's named Keith, I don't think so." And she brought my bike back. And I was like, my mom is awesome. I was one that I didn't want anybody doing it for me. I always wanted to figure out how to do it myself. So if there was anything like that, like I wanted roller skates for my birthday. And so I got roller skates, and my mom was going to try to teach me how to ride on roller skates. I was like, nope, I'm doing this myself. I fell down so many times, but I kept doing it until I could skate. And I actually skate okay. I don't know that I could do it today. I'm kind of broke. But with my mom, she made bread. I remember seeing the bread, loaves of bread on the counter and how it smelled. And there were times when my dad was there that were just awesome. Um, I remember my mom had to go home for my grandfather's funeral, and my dad was there with us. And I remember him bringing my brother and I, and he handed my brother, now he's maybe 4 or 5, a frying pan, and it's bigger than him. So he's holding it in his hands and kind of waddling, dragging it between his legs as we walked into the kitchen. And my dad says, "Come on, boys, I'm going to teach you how to cook. Your mama's not going to be around to powder your bottom your whole life. Got to learn to do things for yourself." And that was kind of the attitude, self-reliance, learning how to do stuff. My dad taught me how to tie shoes in the kitchen. I remember that. That was really cool. And which, surprisingly enough, I got into knot tying. I taught knot tying in the Navy. So it might have had something to do with it. I remember this one time my dad came home from Okinawa. He'd been stationed there a while, and he came home and he said, "Hey, they're going to transfer us, but this is an accompanied tour, and we've got a choice of places to go." And he said, "Where would you?" He gave us a list, and one of them was Japan. And we all sat down as a family and said, "Where would we like to go?" And we all went, "Well, let's go to Japan." So we ended up going to Japan for 3 years. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed Japan. There were so many butterflies. There were lots of butterflies. And we learned to speak Japanese and kind of read signs. And we watched TV in Japanese. There were English shows, but we'd watch Japanese shows. And so we got pretty good at it. My mom would teach English at the Canon cameras. They have a place they make the glass for all the lenses. And she taught English at their factory. And they taught her Japanese. And of course, she would practice on us and only talk to us in Japanese. So we were back after that for about a year. And my mom came in one day and said, "Hey, something in Japanese." And I didn't understand a word of it. And I looked at her, utter confusion. I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And she goes, "Oh, don't be playing around. You know exactly what I said." I'm like, "No, really, I don't." She had told me to go clean my room in Japanese. So to this day, Japanese comes out in the weirdest, most unpredictable, can't make it happen times. I was at a Japanese grocery store and I walk up to the counter, and this is a very Japanese, I mean, it's a real Japanese grocery store here in Atlanta. And the woman at the counter said something to me in Japanese, and I just responded back and immediately thought, "I have no idea what I just said. I hope that was right." She looked at me startled and started talking to me in Japanese. And at that point, I'm completely lost. And we had another time where there was a movie and they had soldiers in it. There were Germans and Japanese. And the Germans had subtitles, but the Japanese didn't. And there was a scene, this guy was talking in Japanese. And without thinking, I turned to my wife and said, basically, he said, blah. And then I went, "Okay, how do I know that?" So yeah, there's all kinds of things that happen like that. When we were in Japan, my mom's Jewish, and when we were in Japan, my dad converted to Judaism. We started going to synagogue. There's a very distinct culture in Judaism of intellectual pursuit, excellence. Um, After synagogue, we would get together and eat around a table and debate stuff. And there was this expectation of excellence in what you did, which dovetailed very nicely into my dad's attitude about things. I don't really, that's pretty much the impression I got while we were in Japan. When we eventually settled in Delaware, when my dad retired from the Navy, um, we started going to the local synagogue. And eventually, there was Hebrew school, learned to read and write Hebrew. And I eventually got bar mitzvahed when I was 13. In order to read out of the Torah, you have to have 10 men or a minyan. And after I got bar mitzvahed, you're now part of the synagogue. And so if you don't show up, they may not be able to read that day. And that seemed important to me. So I would, if I didn't get a ride, I'd walk, and it was miles to get to the synagogue. And I'd walk there and back to go to synagogue so there could be 10 men and be a minyan. And you might be called upon to read. And the Torah is in Hebrew, so you have to read it, on the spur of the moment if you get called upon. There, as far as a spiritual thing, there were things they talked about. I mean, there was all these festivals you have and stuff. And one of the things that stood out was Passover. And Passover is, when the Jews were rescued from slavery by God and taken out of Egypt. And Passover refers to the fact that the 10th plague he brought on Egypt was death. And that's where the firstborn of every family was killed. Unless you did what God told you to do. And he told the Jews in particular, you are to dress in all your clothes like you're ready to travel. You're supposed to kill a unblemished lamb and cook it and eat it for dinner. And you have to eat all of it with nothing left over. And you have to do this standing up like you're ready to walk out the door any second. And you have to paint the blood of the lamb over the doorpost of your house. And when the angel of death passes over, if he sees that, you're spared. So literally, God's wrath is passing over you. That's what that means. And part of that was a tradition of putting out a glass of wine for Elijah and a glass of wine for the Messiah who would eventually come back to redeem his people. I didn't have a perspective on Jesus as a result of that at all. And when I went in the Navy, I kind of fell away from all of that and stopped going to synagogue, didn't really think about it at all. Military service, it isn't the same for everyone. There's a myth that if you send them into the military, they'll make a man out of them. That's a complete myth. It's really an issue of they give you opportunities, and if you run with it, you can make things out of it. And they'll give you more opportunities if you do. If you don't, then they'll find something for you to do. I mean, they have rocks around the flagpole that need painting and weeds that need pulling and that sort of thing. They'll find something for you to do, or they'll kick you out. So I went in the military, and there was this that culture, that Jewish culture of excellence, that really stuck with me. And so I did really well in all my schools. In fact, except for a few schools that didn't have student instructors, I was a student instructor while I was taking the school I was in. I did exceptionally well in all my schools. And when I was in A2, which is my rate training, that's where you learn your trade. And I was an communications electronics technician. And when I was in the middle of that, a guy came in and told us about submarines. And I ended up volunteering for submarines, primarily because I didn't want to go to an aircraft carrier. And he said the one thing that absolutely sold me on going on submarines. He said they had the absolute best food in the Navy. So I went on, in the middle of training, after I finished that section, instead of continuing, which would have been my surface fleet training, I went to submarine school and did real well in submarine school, was a student instructor again, and graduated, and then they went to advanced sub school. And from advanced sub school, they gave me orders to go to crypto school, cryptography. And what I did not know is because of my academic excellence and this running with the ball sort of thing, if you run with it, they'll keep giving you more stuff. So they actually selected me for special operations. And I ended up going to a submarine that was a spec op, a special operations boat, or spec ops. And we did 280 days or more a year at sea. We would do back-to-back-to-back patrols. We were denizens of the deep. We were what's called a fast tech submarine. We had our ship's motto. Well, I actually can't say that in polite company. It had to do with there are two kinds of ships, submarines and targets, and we go for tonnage. So we were hunter-killers of the deep, and we are very good at our job. That was at the end of Vietnam and then the Cold War. So I did all kinds of Cold War operations. Can't talk about any of them. It was awesome. I can't describe how awesome it was doing that. And then I was finished my tour on the boat, and my enlistment was going to be up within about 6 months, and I wasn't sure what to do. And so I called the guy who had been our chief at one time. In fact, he was our chief because he came down to the boat to help us out with a problem, and he met me, and he was so struck by how I managed the problem and how our team was on the boat, that when he was given the opportunity to pick a boat he wanted to go to, he came to our boat. He was our chief. And so he had gotten ill and was disqualified medically from submarine service, so he was on shore duty. And when I called him to say, hey, I'm going to get out, I'm not sure what to do, he said, well, why don't you come on our team? And this is a special team. You can't volunteer for this team. They can't just pick you and send you. The only way you get on this team is you had to have done operations in the field with team members. They had to have seen you operate. You had to have the technical expertise and be known as a technical expert on one of the systems they needed. And then you went through an interview, and if everything was agreed upon and the team accepted you, then they would call Bureau of Personnel and say transfer you there. And I knew that was the process. And so he said, why don't you come to our team? I said, oh, you're crazy. I'd never qualify for that team. He said, are you stupid or something? You are so overqualified, it's not funny. So I ended up going to that team, and that was my last tour, was working with that team. And we did a lot of really cool stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, my focus is military service can leave a mark on you, an indelible mark. You think of a giant handprint where it leaves finger marks on you. And that has been foundational to everything that I do after that. This sense of purpose, this sense of excellence, this sense of when the going gets tough and the tough fall out, they call us. I can handle anything. I can go longer without sleep, longer without food. I can just grind the enemy down like an eraser and extinguish them. That was my attitude when I got out of the service. My sense of who I was, the world was my oyster, and it was what I could make of it, and I had complete control and knew I could do it, and nothing could stand in my way, and I had total control. And I had proven it. I had lots of medals to prove I could do that. There is an aspect of that, though, that eventually catches up with you. It catches up with everybody. There's a debate over whether people are good or evil inherently, and there's a veneer of good over them. But inherently, they're really not good. And I say that because I recognized it in myself. I recognized that at some point I'm standing there and I'm thinking about the person I envisioned being and standing for and the kind of person I was. And they didn't match at all. As far as the world's concerned, and everybody, you see on a daily basis, they thought I was the dude. But morally, not even remotely close. Wasn't the kind of person that I thought I would have been. And the thing that was such a bummer about that is I'm so capable, and I had total control over it, and still failed at it epically. Well, I was living in Florida, and I was a consultant, and I had met a lot of businessmen. I was involved with all these different businesses. And I started running into people in business that were Christians. And I had noticed this moral rot in my own life and the complete lack of it, or at least greatly diminished and lack of it in other people's lives, where there was almost a pride in running around and cheating on a wife, or how many girls you could sleep with, something like that. With them, they're married to their wives, and they obviously love each other, and they believe in keeping marriage sacred, and something special.